Thank you all for being here today despite our weather. And our first order of business is to elect a president for the board for 2015. Do I have any nominations?
I would like to make a nomination for Lisa Mansfield as president and also move the nominations be closed.
I'd like to make a nomination that for Lisa Alexander as vice president and also move that the nominations be closed.
Do we need to do those one at a time?
We need to do this one.
Okay.
That's what we do first.
All right. So roll call for.
We need a second.
Oh, we need a second
I'll
for.
second the presidential
Patrick.
nomination.
Are there any other
Thank you.
nominations?
Any other nominations or any other discussion? Oh. Thanks for calling on Mrs. Kelly over there. All right. Hearing none, roll call?
Mrs. Sims?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Abstain.
And Mr. Miller?
Yes.
And that was to close nominations, correct?
Oh, was that to close?
That was a vote.
That was a vote. And now we have a motion for Mr. Alexander to remain as vice president. Do we need to?
We have a nomination.
I'll second
We
that.
need a second.
We do this once.
I know.
Okay.
Whew. All right. Any other nominations? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Abstain.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Sims?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have the Honorable Judge Linda Teodosio here, and she is going to give us our oath of office. So, thank you for being here, Judge. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We need a copy of it.
I'm wearing my official robe, so there'll be no technicalities. Okay. And I just want to say briefly, and I'm not going to, I know I was just invited to swear in, but, you give the judge a robe and a chance to have the floor. But I did want to say what a pleasure it is at the court to work with the personnel of the Akron Public Schools. I think we enjoy a very good relationship, and I know that we both feel comfortable speaking to each other when there are issues, and comfortable with each other and working together. And I think that's something that we're very lucky to have in this community. And I want to publicly tell the school board what a pleasure it is to work with all the personnel of your schools, from your wonderful superintendent all the way down to the entire staff and the teachers in every building. So thank you for such a good system and for everything that you do for the community. And I know as school board members, a lot of times your tasks are thankless and you only hear from folks when they have complaints, but you really have a wonderful system here, and we're so lucky to have you here in our community. So with that being said, I'll do the president first, I guess.
Do you guys want to come up with me?
Take a picture.
We can do that.
Lenny, take your jacket off. Yes.
So Teddy couldn't be here last year because he was not feeling well, and my mother couldn't be here last year because she had had knee surgery. So.
Come on, Mike. If you raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully perform faithfully the duties as President of the Akron Board of Education to the best of your ability and in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Board of Election and the laws now in effect and hereinafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I do.
All right, congratulations. And Bruce, I guess you're next.
I'm gonna ask my wife and my daughter to come up, please.
raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will perform faithfully the duties as Vice President of the Akron Board of Education to the best of your ability and in accordance with the rules and regulations of the Board of Education and laws now in effect and hereinafter to be enacted until your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I do.
Congratulations.
Can we do a redo? The other girls here. Can we fake it? Can we just fake it?
All right, now we start to get into the meat of our meeting, so I know that my family's out of here. Thank you, Judge. Thank you so much. I just want to know when So, I went over this a little bit with Marilyn today, but for the record, the board committees have decided to remain in the places that they were last year as well. So for legal, contracts, and board policy committee, that would be Mr. Bravo and Mr. Miller. Yes? No, that's Mr., sorry.
Lombardi.
Correct.
Mr. Lombardi and Mr. Alexander. Finance and capital management is Mr. Bravo and Mr. Miller. Instructional policy and student achievement committee would be Mrs. Sims and Reverend Walker. The OSBA trustee, I believe, is Bruce. Is that correct? Oh, that's Veronica. I get those two mixed up. That one is Mrs. Sims, and then the appointment of the liaison for the Urban School District Advisory Network is Mr. Alexander. The cluster assignments are to remain the same with one exception. There's a little bit of a flip-flop. We have Mr. Lombardi is going to be moving into the Ellet cluster, and Mr. Miller is taking on the North cluster. And with, what's that?
Just who the
Oh, do you want to know who everybody else is? You guys will have to help me. Who has the Bookdale cluster?
Myself.
All right, Mr. Alexander has Bookdale. Is
East is me.
is Patrick. Now Ellet is Mr. Lombardi. Firestone is
Me,
Mrs.
Bruce.
Oh, that's you as well?
Yes.
Okay. Garfield is Mrs. Sims. Firestone was Mr. Alexander.
Right.
Firestone was
Garfield is Mrs. Sims. Kenmore is Reverend Walker. And North is now Mr. Miller. And I would just encourage those clusters to call upon these board members if there's a need, a want, or just you'd like someone to attend an event. These are folks that are willing, able, and will make themselves available to the best of their ability. And if they cannot, someone will definitely step in. So please ask. That being said, I think that covers all that business. That moves us into community and school reflections. And we haven't been here for a month, but it was the holidays, so I'm not sure if there's very much to report.
just
There's a
have-
lot going on.
One thing that I'd like to report, it's not that I went in the community, but it was, if everyone saw the newspaper last Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, Mr. Livingston had articles in there when they were talking about diversity in education. And I wanted to thank our board for working on allowing us to have more diversity in the classrooms and administration as well, because it is needed, and it's something that is across the nation. It's just not here in Akron, Ohio, but especially even in the bigger cities, they look for more diversity because of the diversity of students that we have in the school. So I would still encourage us also to continue to work on those diversity in our schools here in Akron Public. Thank you.
Just want to, a little update. I attended the Business Advisory Council meeting on December 16th, and just one thing that came out of that I thought I'd share, very interesting. The Career Education Committee is working on a 2-hour program that's going to invite 20 manufacturing businesses in to inform them and educate them on what Akron Public Schools is offering and what higher ed is doing to show connectivity to the employees and those employers, and try to get them involved and commit to involvement in our trades, our career education programs in the Akron Public Schools. So it's almost the charge, it seems, lately of the Business Advisory Council, as that seems to be their focus right now as far as outreach to the community, and it's moving forward and in a very positive manner.
Anyone else? All right. I would like then, since we have no request to address the board, to further recognize the board. It happens to be School Board Recognition Month here in the state of Ohio, and I have certificates for each of our board members. The board did meet and have a retreat last week, and I have got to tell you that there are no, if I had to work on a night and just come in and spend an evening with someone, there are fewer people in the city that I would like to sit down with than these 7 folks. These are, or 6 folks, these are some of the hardest working people you will ever meet. They are dedicated to the children of this city and to this city as a whole. And so I have one for Mr. Alexander.
Thank you.
Mr. Bravo. This is in appreciation for exemplary leadership and public service from the Ohio School Board Association. Mr. Lombardi. Myself. Mr. Miller. Thank you. Does anyone want to say anything about that? You guys can feel free to say anything about serving on the board that you like to. How glad you are that they picked January, the most dreary month of all, to recognize the school board. But thank you with all sincerity for all the work that you guys do especially the things that are behind the scenes, that aren't in front of the cameras and aren't when people are looking. Thank you for those things.
I just want to say, for me, how much I realize it is a privilege to serve on this post, and how wonderful it is to me to know that we have so much influence, really, transformative influence on our most richest resource in our community, our kids. And so it's so nice to come and to work with board members here in particular that put everything into what it is that they're doing, and that they wholeheartedly concur with our philosophy to make sure that every child in the district, no matter what side of the track they're on, is afforded a quality education. And that we come in here and, although we don't always agree, I know y'all find that hard to believe, but at the end of the day, it's really, really and truly all about the kids. So I'm glad to be a part of that. So thank you.
All right. Ms. Sibley has a presentation tonight about our family engagement strategy.
One handout, if you could take and pass along. Deborah's going to help me because it's a little easier for me to talk from the slides. And Karen is my handout helper. So I'm going to give a brief overview this evening on our family engagement strategies with the district. And I wanted to note that we very quickly learned to change our terminology from parent engagement strategy to family engagement strategy. We have so many different variations of what is a family for students in our district being cared for by extended relatives, grandparents, and others that our team thought family engagement strategy really best describes the work that we're doing. And so we are connected to Focus Area 3, which you may be able to see a little more clearly on your handout, which is the intentional connections with parents. But we also feel that we are connected to and touch on the learning conditions, in that we are looking to enhance learning conditions for our students and families in our schools. I'm happy to be a part of a team of very passionate folks. We have a great mix of APS administrators, retired principals, our manager of school counselors. We have partner agency members with Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority and Summit Education Initiative, and most importantly, parent liaisons who are working in our district right now in that capacity and can share a lot with us about the role and the work that they're doing. So I wanted to start with why we feel this is important. 2 years ago, I was a part of a team of folks that went to the University of Virginia, and there was a lot of discussion around what we need to be doing to engage our families in supporting student success. And what we know for sure is that we have a wide range of families that we serve in our district, from those who are limited in their resources and ability to care for their students and meet all of the needs that they may have, all the way to those who are extremely connected and can draw upon many resources. And we know that our families operate within and across these mental models. And by the way, these were actually developed by families who come from low income, middle class, and wealthy communities in Ohio. So this is not just some made up stuff, but people have actually said, this is the way we operate. This is the way that we think about the world that we live in. And it really determines how we act, and it can either help or interfere with learning. Most of our challenging students and families are operating within that relationship mental model, where they are oftentimes juggling lots of things that interfere with their ability to support their students. When you think about school systems, government agencies, and most businesses, we are of an achievement mindset. I mean, this is most of us in the room. We have goals, we have future stories, we juggle all of those things around the circle. But what typically happens is when we're trying to talk and communicate with each other, we talk more at each other than with each other, and we're sometimes missing the opportunity to build bridges that can really support student success. So we feel that it is critically important that we really understand the populations that we serve. And the better we understand them, the more likely we are to have student success. So that's what that mental model framework is all about. A quote that we use, we know that it is important because no significant learning occurs without relationship. So the more we increase our understanding of those we serve, the better our relationships, the more likely our students are to be successful. We also know that it is very important, and Karen Lydell Anderson speaks to this often, to really pay attention to our early childhood population. We know that our children need more exposure and connections to positive influences, but look at where they are based on their economic group and the number of affirmations and prohibitions students are receiving. And so we ask ourselves, where are we in this chart in terms of our institution's operations in providing and ensuring that our kids get enough affirmations throughout the school day and year to make them feel good about coming to school. I mean, in a low-income family that is receiving benefits, they're getting twice as more don'ts than they are, you're a good student, you can persist, and you can accomplish. So this is just something to give you a snapshot of what we're talking about and why we feel it is so important that we really understand the families that we're working with. Yes,
So is
ma'am.
the affirmation one for every what?
One for every 2 prohibitions. If I tell you to stop, don't, quit, I'm only going to tell you something good and positive. One for every 2. So it's just something to think about, and we think it's especially important because before they even get to us in kindergarten, the exposure to the number of words is critical. And so as we build relationships with our families, we want to target and pay close attention to the early childhood education population. So we do have a plan. I will be happy to share that link with you. There are lots of details, action steps, and timelines in that plan, but basically there are 3 focus areas that I wanted to briefly talk with you about today. The first is assisting schools in creating welcoming environments supportive of family engagement. And as a part of that, we are conducting the cultural competency training to increase understanding of the populations, which I've already talked about. We are currently surveying grades 5 through 12 in our schools with the Summit Education Initiative Youth View survey so that we can get their perspective on how well we're doing in creating supportive environments. And then we're going to be developing a parent survey, which will roll out and pilot in the spring. And then working with schools to develop concrete solutions around this. Once they're trained, have the discussion, what are we going to do to immediately change practice to improve our environments in our schools? The second area of focus in the plan is to develop more clarity and direction on the role of our family liaisons in our schools. We know we need to tighten up the job descriptions. One of the things that we've learned is there are many of them in buildings doing all kinds of different things. Some aren't even remotely operating to build those bridges with parents. So we're going to tighten that up and focus on resolving family concerns, connecting families to resources, training and outreach. Supervision and coordination to the district, focus, alignment with that. We also want to connect and support to the family engagement needs of our other APS departments. So, for instance, if the elementary division needed to share information with parents and conduct some outreach, home visits, and meetings around the 3rd grade guarantee, we want our family liaisons to be a part of that work. If secondary needs to share information about new graduation requirements, that should be some of the focused work that our family liaisons are doing. And then training and professional development. Coming here soon, we're going to have a curriculum called You, Your Child's First Teacher that will be rolling out and providing some professional development for our family liaisons. And then the third area of focus is assisting families in supporting learning at home. So we are going to restart the APS Parent Academies, we used to call them, which taught parents the Common Core or content area curriculum. We're now calling it You, Your Child's First Teacher, which is a really easy to use, easily understood, common sense way to share information with parents about the academic content standards. We spent some time last summer and last year, conducting focus group discussions, and we've learned a lot. We know what our parents have said to us. We learned that written communication, letters going home, and websites are not always the best way to reach families who struggle with resources, who are limited, and who are juggling all of those other relationships that I spoke with you about. We're partnering with other community partners to connect with them, to expand our reach. We're going to look at websites and phone apps and more face-to-face interaction. We have one teacher at the Reach Center who is the Nikki Bright kindergarten teacher. She's going to be partnering with our Akron Metropolitan Housing Authority to conduct home visits. And she's excited to do it so that she can share with us what that might look like. What is that practice? What was helpful, what was not? What are some of the things we need to be careful about when we recommend that as an opportunity for folks? And then I just wanted to share that in December, thanks to the support from our Curriculum and Instruction Office and Dr. McWilliams, we were able to pull together a group of learning specialists to design academic toolkits for out-of-school time partners, youth service organizations, and other folks who spend a lot of time with our students when they're not in school, so that they understand what kids need to know. They have access to resources that can continue to support learning outside of school and at home, and it expands our reach so that we're all on the same page. And just to give you a very quick example, Mary Kelly and I last spring visited the City of Akron Recreation Department meeting where all managers sat and listened to us talk about the third grade guarantee. Out of that came requests for us to provide them with information to share with parents because they oftentimes see them when we don't. And so we want to spread throughout the community in ways that allow our partners to assist us in supporting learning when they see the kids that we so often are most challenged to serve.
So how do we, on that last one, how do we make sure that those entities stay engaged? Because potentially that could become just an unfunded.
Well, it is currently unfunded.
I mean,
it really
then
is.
it becomes a weighted unfunded mandate when people are deciding on resources and how they use their people. How do we keep up with that, or just kind of monitor that piece? Because it's a very good piece, but if it's just how do we keep that?
It is going to require some monitoring and coordination, but one thing that I've noticed is that folks are now, because of some of the work going on with Summit Education Initiative and really aligning to Cradle to Career access points and understanding where you fit as an organization, they're actually coming to us and saying, you know, we're not academic folks. We're not educators. We don't have that skill set. So we are actually enhancing their capacity to better serve their young people. And so far we've had nothing but positive, because if we're going to give you a tool that you can use that ensures your kids are properly connected to what they're learning in school, and you don't have to figure that out, we're going to help you figure that out and make sure you have the information necessary. It will become an issue of staying on top of it, making sure it's consistent, making sure that the message is being shared, but it's a start because we had not ever had those kinds of conversations. So we have to start it. We have to get more time on task with our young people. And any of Mary or Mark's principals will tell you more time on task is critical. We see them during a certain part of the day, the week, and the year. There are summers, after schools, and weekends that are spent in many other places in our community, and we all have to be on that same page to support our students. Did I answer your question? Sort of, kind of?
Thank you.
Okay, but you'll get me later, I'm sure. So we do believe that if we implement our family engagement plan that will deepen our family's level of trust in what we offer and their sense of partnership. And we'll also realize some of the following outcomes and indicators. Here's what we're looking at with cultural competency training. So we want to increase understanding of communication patterns. I've talked about that. Understanding of the barriers to success for some of our families. We want to increase understanding in the choices and circumstances facing people with limited resources. And you can see that with 16 cultural competency trainings completed so far, that we are moving the needle. The arrow there on the blue going from a score of 3 to 4 pre-training and moving to a knowledge base of 7 to 8 for 70% of the folks who have participated in those trainings. Those 16 represent schools. Those are schools and departments that have taken part in our training so far. Some of the aha moments, I just want to share with you some of what we are hearing from staff who take part in those trainings to better understand the populations that we serve. And if we're getting this kind of feedback, I'm real happy about it. I'm really happy about it. Any thoughts?
Just, okay. The slide before, there's 16 buildings done, 6 to go. What's the time frame of the 16 that we've done and the time frame to get this finished up?
Well, we have a 2-year time frame that we put in place for ourselves to hit all APS schools and departments, new hires, with training for the first round and then ongoing support thereafter. The 16 plus 6 gets us to 22 through February. So we're moving pretty quickly here with this work, because what's happening is the building gets the training, they're liking what they learn, and they're sharing it with others. We have 8 trained folks, 5 who are active, and we are very quickly running out of trainer resources to accommodate the schedules.
Okay.
And of course, we're competing with data dives, assessments, professional development, Karen G, Jick's team, and Ellen and Mary and Mark, and all the other folks who request time in buildings. So it is sort of a catch-22 to get on the schedule and to be given the time to offer 6 hours worth of training. We've had to break it up to 2 and 2 for some buildings. We went back 4 times to another building to get all 6 hours in. So it is intense, it's comprehensive, it goes deep into these indicators and these outcomes that we're looking for.
But and so this part is just training our staff to be aware of different cultures and different households. And it's a different part of actually the outreach into the community.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the welcoming environments
Gotcha.
piece. What are we doing to fully understand the populations that we serve so that our environments in our buildings are conducive to building those relationships?
Thanks.
Mr. Baca?
I don't know if I was going to ask something similar. I had a couple of thoughts running through my head, but the cultural competency piece, and I had written it down early on. I should teach myself to not take as many notes because you tend to answer a lot of the things that I'm going to ask. But the cultural competency training domains, are the family engagement efforts targeted to a specific population of students, for example, just at-risk students, or is it cultural competency to understand the diverse nature of our student body and their families in general? Because the training domains tend to be understanding barriers to success and understanding difficult choices people face versus just understanding something from a cultural competency standpoint, which, for example, and I'm gonna start mumbling and jumble things up here, but I was thinking earlier, cultural competency piece and tying that to other departments might be, for example, with communications, the forms that we fill out. I'm sometimes vexed on how to fill out a form because my family is not a traditional family, and certain things that certain forms call for, we don't fit into. But that's not necessarily what you're talking about here. These are more about, nor would I necessarily, maybe, fit into some of these categories here where you're talking about the training domains and the outcomes and the performance indicators. That wouldn't necessarily, so is this all aimed at specific population of students and families, or is this cultural competency, are you painting it more broadly?
We are painting it more broadly. It is the full gamut of those that we serve. However, when we talk about those students who are most difficult to reach, to teach, and to see the academic gains that we want to see, we are really struggling with the population of students who have the least resources to bring that to bear. But when we train, we're talking about the big picture. We're being sure to be inclusive of the whole APS. But we really want to hone in on how we can support success for those who need it the most.
And do you guys consider those types of things even for students of ours that are being raised by non-traditional families, grandparents and aunts and uncles and things like that, all the way down to the forms that we fill out and the way that things go home? And
so that team that I listed there are all kinds of work groups, and like I said, lots of detail in that plan that get to our communication strategies, the letters we're sending home, the way we converse with our families, some of the language barriers that we might create, the style of families that we have. It is big picture, but we really want to drill in and measure where we feel we need the most help. So, did I answer your question?
yes, thanks.
Carl,
Yes.
that would include the welcoming those individuals into our schools, starting if they come into our schools, but it would also, the various, when we talk about communication patterns, the language that the families use, the bilingual and so forth, and the type of, what are the barriers that they're having, that they're faced with each and every day, and how do we deal with them along with the choices of circumstances, the circumstances they face, poverty, homeless, all those things. We're talking about all those good things, including all that. Is that correct?
It is. And if you see increase in understanding of communication patterns, for instance, you could have issues communicating regardless of where you are as a family. That's a big picture piece. It could be. The same with barriers. Regardless of where we are in our family structure, our economic status, our educational level, we could still experience barriers. So we do paint that big picture to include it all in everything you're saying. But we really do want to measure it for those that we know need it the most, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It is big picture,
Right.
but we have a targeted measure that we're looking at.
Right.
The Youth View survey, just want to hit on this. There are 4 of the 8 domains that we feel are connected to the family engagement work. There are 4 other domains that principals will dive into in February with SEI at the data and benchmark session that are related to academics and academic press and college-going identity, but for welcoming environments supportive of family engagement. The indicators that we're looking for in our Youth View survey administration are the positive adult relationships, and you can see the individual items listed there, that we're going to be looking for improvement in, from first survey administration to next survey administration and ongoing. It drills down to the building, to the classroom, the grade level, and the teacher.
I might have zoned out when you said, did you say what grade levels this was?
Grades 5 through 12 are currently administering this survey. Results are coming back as we speak. Positive peer relationships.
Can we go back just one quick, one quick second. On the question about adults in the schools, does it cover specifically teachers? Because there's different kind of adults in the schools that have more interaction with the students. I mean, if it's the resource officer who's kind of like nice to everybody, that's different than, you know, a science teacher or a, social studies teacher. So does the data that gets collected, does it really target those individuals who are really, really responsible for shaping?
We don't disaggregate by job code for the adults, but you raise a good question. And the way that this is laid out is the way that SEI has structured it. We have not modified it, changed it. And I imagine that with this first administration, we're going to learn some things and want to adapt and tailor it to best meet our needs. You do raise a good point, but we don't disaggregate it by job code.
Would they be interested in making that adjustment up front? Because I think just collecting, well, anyway.
I'll raise the question. I will raise the question. Any other thoughts? So you can see the other three domains: positive peer, sense of safety, and future self. Again, we're going to look for improvement in those areas from one administration to another. And I'll keep you posted on where we are and what we get. And once we actually see the data analysis, we'll have more information in terms of how it was analyzed for each of the schools. So again, here are the family survey items, indicators that we're going to look for. We want to be measurable. We want to be able to identify what's improving and what's not. These came to us from parents as suggestions for what they would like the survey to tell us. And then ultimately, I mean, we have lots of indicators, performance measures and outcomes that we've identified in our plan, and I will send you those links and look forward to any comments you could provide. But ultimately, improved academic achievement, positive perceptions and school climate improved, and stability in APS enrollment. I mean, I would love to be able to say people are feeling good about what we offer and they're staying. You can directly tie that to our family engagement strategy, but ultimately I would hope that it contributes to that big goal. So I'm going to wrap up because there is a very important event happening right as we speak in my family room. Any other questions for me?
I saw that, we talked a little bit about climate. Is the climate officer involved in any way?
Yes, he is a member of our cultural competence team. He is a trainer, and we're sharing data across the system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. It goes back to something that I always like to say. My husband was taught in the military that people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And what this really gets down to is the heart of serving our community and meeting them where they are and bringing them to where they want to go. And so I appreciate that very much. Our next order of business is the approval of our meeting minutes from December 8th, 2014.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Allocating?
Yes.
Mr. Barrow?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Sims?
Yes.
Reverend Wall?
Next would be our superintendent's recommendation.
Madam President, I have before me for your consideration 52 personnel recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
Moved and properly seconded. Any questions or comments about personnel?
I have a few, and maybe I'm reading this wrong. A couple of items like item 9, where it talked from to, and it looked like from, and it went to. Is that a decrease, or I'm looking at that backwards?
It's correct.
Okay. So it's a decrease.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
I just want to say, look at the retirements, and someone who's been around our athletic department for a good while, didn't think that we'd see this so soon, but Joe Howard is going to be retiring, and he has been in this position, wow, a long time. I think probably since the time that Mr. Buckner was in that position, and that's been a long time ago. So, well, congratulate Joe for the things he's done, and hope him a good retirement.
I mean, I hate to leave that dangling out there, item 9, because I asked the same question. I think there was some minor discrepancy possibly, and maybe their credentialing that resulted in that change. So it's just that they just took money from them. Something was there was a minor.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Helpful.
Any other questions? Concerns?
Now, I just want to say I was excited to see that some of the IB work that we're working on with CASE is still going forward, and some of those administrators and principals and teachers are getting the next step with training. So I'm excited about that.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Bravo.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
Mrs. Sims.
Yes.
Reverend Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
And I just want to point out in item 53, I regret to report the death of Cornelia Elliott Hurst, who was a substitute teacher during the break. If you remember, last year her sons were all Eagle Scouts and were recognized at that ceremony. So that is a terrible loss for the Akron Public Schools family.
Yeah, just to echo that, just the support from APS that showed up at funeral services and the kids throughout the district who came dressed in Firestone garb, and just, I can't remember exactly the other folks I've met during this last week, but just the sense of camaraderie that you felt and about how she lived her life. We were so proud to see what she poured into her boys, but it's apparent that what she was pouring into them, she gave freely to other folks. So it was wall-to-wall people, APS was represented, and students supporting students, and it was just wonderful, wonderful to see. Just a terrible loss, but a life well lived. And I just hope for us, I know we're not babysitters, but to have, I think her oldest son is now at,
I don't know what university.
he's at, no, but it's Morehouse. I think it's Morehouse. And if you can imagine what this change means, that there is some way for our students to make sure that there is some support for them. I don't know how we do that, but she certainly worked hard to put her boys on a marvelous upward trajectory. And we see it all the time. It's written in the data how our young folks' paths are changed by these kind of crises. That we are mindful of that so that doesn't happen. So, thank you.
All right, next, Madam President, I have before me for your consideration 2 motions and 5 resolutions on the consent agenda. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any questions or concerns about consent?
I have one, actually, I kind of addressed it with Mr. James, if it's on here. Oh, this isn't the one.
So maybe business affairs?
I think it was item number 6.
Oh,
That's it.
Oh.
And I just had a question about how all that works. That's a significant amount of money. It's over $500,000. It's an increase in construction managers' fees for the projects at King, Bookdale, and higher community learning centers. And Mr. James explained some of it to me. He gave me his comfort with that increase. I wanted to talk to Paul Flesher, but I ran out of time today. And I guess I'd just ask you, Paul, you're comfortable with that increase for the construction manager?
Yes, and of that 520,000, 301,000 of it will be returned by the bonding company for the costs that were incurred through King.
How does that all, I know that we're responsible for 41% of the increase.
And 59% is from the state. And what they do is they have funds that have been deposited in specific bank accounts that identify the state funds, our funds, and it'll be taken out in that percentage from each one.
How much of our increase for these projects will be covered by the bonding monies?
Of this 520, 301,000.
Okay.
So, and that was for the extension of time at King.
We had an extensive discussion of that at Joint Board of Review as well. So it's a complex piece to understand how the money flows back and forth between us and the state. So yes.
Just quickly, item number 7, as relates to fees. These are fees for books, for labs, for items like that, for students who are unable to pay
Yes, our curricular and materials fees.
any number of things. Okay, and does this include the ACT as well?
No, that's already
separate.
offered at no charge to all of our juniors across the district.
All right.
Any more discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call please.
Mr. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Sims?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
And finally, Madam President, I have before me for your consideration 8 business affairs recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved. Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any questions or concerns about business affairs? All right, roll call please.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Sims?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi?
Yes.
Superintendent's report.
I really don't have a report for today's meeting. I will have a report at our next meeting about some information on our student population and how it relates to our facilities project.
Leading into that, I would also ask the board to take a second look also at the breakdown of the schools and the class sizes. That was all in the superintendent's, in our accompanying documents this time around. As far as the president's report, it's a great honor to be sitting in this chair again. I'm going to look to this board and push you a little harder this year than I did last year. If I get a call and I need to be somewhere, I would love to have some of you with me. I know there are re-elections coming up this year, and so I know that some of you are going to be busy with that as well, but I do want to help to continue to develop this board. We've come so far as a group in the last year, and I'm really proud of the work that we were able to accomplish, and I think that in the next year we can take that even another step further. So I appreciate your confidence and rely on your help greatly as we face all of what next year will bring. Who knows what the weather and all of the fates and things have in line for us in the coming year. But I know that if we, I know that this is a good team, so that's really important. And I know that Mr. Pendleton has a few things to share as well.
2 quick updates from the finance office. As we turn to a new calendar year, it begins our next budget for the next fiscal year. So we do that both internally and externally. We've started with Superintendent James to meet with departments and go over next year's school budgets, believe it or not. Along with that, though, the Treasurer's Office is required to submit to the Summer State Budget Commission our tax budget. So that's the process, a really high level of us comparing what we receive in revenue and what we think our expenses are going to be. We certify that to the county, and they return to us a certificate. And that certificate is our authority to spend as of July 1st. Boards of Education across Ohio used to bring that to their boards and have it approved. That's no longer required. So really where the board wants to pay attention is probably that first certificate that we'll bring to you in the appropriation resolution. And you've seen that in the temporary and the permanent appropriation. So it's a busy time in the Treasurer's Office there. Also, we are going to move the Finance Committee to the 28th, and so we'll be publicly noticing that probably this week. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, where are we? Committee reports. We have a few things out there. Anything from legal and policy? Not this time around. Finance.
Yes, we do have a few things. As always, we just want to acknowledge some donations. From Michelle Hershey to King CLC for kindergarten class, Little Tykes toys from to the early learning program at Stewart, coats to Findlay CLC, Pizza Hut pizzas from Pizza Hut to Kent Middle School, several donations to Project Rise, cash donations from Primitivo LLC to North High School, from Calmic Inc. to STEM High School, from the King School Group AA to King CLC, from the Akron Dental Society for the dental program, from the Italian American Professional Businessmen's Club to the Early Learning Program, from Resnick CLC's PTA to Bridges Learning Center, and cash donation from Roger Safford, the Third Trust to Firestone High School for the girls basketball team. Also, just to give you an idea of some of the things that we continue to talk about in the Finance Committee, are reviewing the district's investment policies and investable assets. The state of Ohio has very conservative investment options, but with our review and hopefully modest changes to the investment portfolio, we're expecting some additional revenues in those areas over what we're earning now, so we'll continue to report back on any value added in that area. The Treasurer has also created new monthly reports in a similar format to the 5-year forecast document for a little consistency, so they'll highlight the expected versus actual revenue and expenditures. We obviously have a very large budget and it's difficult to predict sometimes, so hopefully these reports will help to identify trends a little sooner. And each month's financial report will be reviewed at the second regular meeting, so you can expect that. And I think that's it for the finance report. That's all I'm going to report on.
Just wanted to briefly mention, I sent this out to Tim and Patrick as well, just so that they would know that donation from Resnick's PTA to Bridges, that was money raised by students. It was over $1,000 that was raised, and they wanted to give to another school in the district. I believe it was to purchase books for their school. So there was a presentation. It was $1,056 that was raised by the students of Resnick to give to the students of Bridges, which is nice.
Awesome. Sorry, I meant to include that.
No, that's okay. You mentioned it. Please. How about from curriculum and instruction? Nothing today? All right. Thank you all very much. Okay. Any unfinished business? I know we do have a new business. We have the approval of the resolution for the appreciation of Laura Jennemans that I was very honored to present to her back in December. We didn't vote on it in the previous meeting because we wanted to surprise her with it at her retirement. So I need a motion to approve that resolution. That would be the first thing in business.
So moved.
Second.
You have to properly second it. Any questions about that? Okay, thank you. And roll call, please.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mrs. Sims?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Neesmith?
Yes. And then I wanted to give the board an opportunity in new business also to mention any of the things that you had noticed in the rules and regulations for the board that you had concerns about. Did anyone want to talk about any of that, or do you just want to send an email to Rhonda with any changes to that? We're voting on those rules tonight so that we had a chance to look at them. We talked about that a little bit last week when we were here.
I would rather send an email.
Yeah.
I marked mine up.
Okay.
But I don't think I didn't bring them.
Okay, that's fine.
I think email would be good too.
Okay.
So I have mine
If you
to
can
send.
all just take a look at that, see what concerns you had, and send that back to Rhonda so that we usually approve that at this meeting, but since there were some changes, we're going to take some time to let you look that over and see if you have any concerns, and they're going to send those to you.
Well, we can adopt these.
Yes. You tell everyone what you've got. If they have-
Rules and Manual of the Board of Education, Akron, Ohio, 1905.
What was your favorite thing you found so far?
His name.
I don't know, I haven't.
My favorite thing that I saw this afternoon was that the teachers were responsible for heating and cooling their classrooms.
Warming and ventilating.
And the warming and ventilating. Yes, wasn't very cool, I'm sure. Amongst other things.
That's
No.
still their responsibility.
No child was allowed to sit in currents of cold air.
Oh,
Very
I'm
interesting.
glad we're not adopting those today. I don't think that you could be married and be a teacher back in 1905.
You could not.
I didn't think so.
Wow.
So, we would have a
That's
whole
where that
lot of
feminist
problems.
Robinson came from.
We'd have a whole lot of other issues if we passed that one. All right. So we have need for executive session.
Just other
Oh, dear.
business, do we
Yes.
do other business? I just want to
We can.
remind everyone that Monday is Martin Luther King's Day,
ma'am.
and just to say openly, just thank you to the King family for their sacrifice. I had an opportunity to take my daughter on Friday to see the movie Selma. So if you haven't had an opportunity to see that, I encourage you to see that. We also sat and watched Mandela. But I guess, if anything, we understand is what can happen through the collective will of the people against many what seem to be insurmountable odds came change. I mean, real change, transformative change. As we think about some of the challenges we face as a public institution around educating our children who are coming from not so pleasant of circumstances at times, just remembering what the collective will can do. So I would encourage folks to get out and do something on Martin Luther King's Day, not just to consider it just a day off, and really expose your kids to things that cause them to think and really have that conversation with them. So thank you again to the King family, and I just encourage us to get out and do.
Be a great thing to go do this weekend is see the movie as a family and have some discussion. It's been really great.
And just when you highlighted that, and I appreciate the outstanding work of the King family, but that movie also highlights the outstanding work of a lot of unsung heroes and heroines, and names of persons. When after I saw it, I was going back looking at Septima Clark, Ella Baker, and on and on and on, people who dealt with, particularly a person like Septima Clark, with educating people. She used the Sears catalog to educate freed slaves and others how to read, to fill out forms. Later on in the 40s and 50s, how to fill out applications to drive. But she used practical means to educate them so that they could then look at the Constitution and be able to fill out the form to register to vote. So all of that played, but it was education.
Right.
You know, to form their confidence and develop them. So we're living in a difficult time where we look at events like that and realize how far have we come. And there's lots of work to be done still.
Yeah, just re-emphasizing the collective will of the people. You know, although the King family, without question, made, you know, almost unimaginable sacrifices to advance a righteous advancement that would improve the lives of many. So the second thing I wanted to point out was the Earned Income Tax Credit Program. Akron Summer Community Action offers 3 income tax return preparations that will kick off on January the 20th. I will get stuff to Mark so you can send it out to parents. It's for free. There is a Super Saturday where you don't really have to make an appointment, but there are appointments during the weekdays, after work, and on the weekends. So we want to avail. You know, we hate to see parents going out to pay for income tax preparations when in fact this resource is available in the community for free. So, thank you.
All right. So now I need a motion pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1 and 3, to move into executive session for the purpose of considering, I believe it is, let's see, what was the G1? Employment, okay. Employment.
Lawsuit or pending.
Okay. And the settling of lawsuit or pending legislation. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Sims?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.